career, and he could be talking to you about me rather than me talking about him. So here is his photograph. This is what he looks like. My husband Erastus was born in 1808 and died in 1880. And he was a military surgeon and a military physician. My husband Erastus was stationed on the Mackinac Island in 1836. He was a surgeon in the army. And he met a man by the name of Solomon Juneau. And Solomon Juneau invited him to be a surgeon and to be a physician in his newly developed city called Juneautown. And as you know, Juneautown was one of the early settlements that formed the city of Milwaukee. So my husband Erastus got to Milwaukee about 1837. He was an excellent physician. He formed the Milwaukee Medical Society. He also formed the Wisconsin Medical Society that was formed in the 1840s. In the 1860s, my husband conducted the very first successful removal of a diseased kidney, and that's called a nephrectomy. Previously, doctors removed diseased kidneys, but the patient died. So he performed a removal of a diseased kidney and the patient lived. So he goes down in medical history as performing the first successful nephrectomy in U.S. history. During the Civil War, my husband was a brigadier general, and he was the Surgeon General for the state of Wisconsin. So during the Civil War, he went right down to the lines, and he conducted surgeries, and he did medicine right there with the troops during the Civil War. He was also the Surgeon General for the state of Wisconsin for 13 years after the Civil War. After the Civil War, my husband felt, after his experience of being with the troops, that Milwaukee would be a good location for a hospital for veterans and a home for veterans. And he proposed this idea to the federal government. So my husband, Erastus Bradley Wilcott, is credited with having the idea, and he's the originator of the idea of having the VA here in Milwaukee. And so to honor that accomplishment, there is a historical marker on the VA grounds. Maybe you've seen it. It's not easy to find, but there is a historical marker on VA grounds that identifies that my husband Erastus Bradley Wilcott was the originator of the idea of the VA. It also lists all of his other accomplishments while being a physician here in the city of Milwaukee. I'm very proud of my husband and what he's accomplished. But now let me tell you about my life and as a physician here in Milwaukee. As I mentioned to you, I was born in 1826 in York, Maine, and decided as a young woman to go to medical school. And you know, women did not go to medical school. They were not allowed in regular medical schools in those days. But there were two specific schools in the United States that allowed women to be trained as doctors. So I attended the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, and I graduated fully licensed as a medical doctor in 1856. And of all places, I decided to come to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to start my medical practice. And actually, I didn't do this on purpose. I was the very first female physician in the city of Milwaukee and also in the state of Wisconsin. So I had that distinct honor of being both the first in the city and in the state to practice medicine. But you know, it was not easy in the 1850s to be a female physician. First of all, in those days, they thought women were not smart enough to be doctors. They thought women were not strong enough to be doctors. We didn't have the fortitude that it took to be doctors. They also thought that a woman's place was in the home, having children, raising children, and certainly not in a career such as medicine. It was very difficult getting my practice started here in the city of Milwaukee. In fact, did you ever hear of fake news? I'll repeat that question. Did you ever hear of fake news? Well, we had fake news in my day as well. Shortly after arriving here in Milwaukee, one of my male colleagues was so upset that a woman was practicing medicine in Milwaukee that he published my obituary and said I had passed away and that all of my patients should come to see him. Well, the very next day, I published a retraction and said that I was not dead yet. Remember I told you that the Milwaukee Medical Society was founded in the 1840s? Well, after arriving in Milwaukee, I applied to the Milwaukee Medical Society 5 times. It took 5 or 6 years. I applied every year. Each year, I was rejected. Why was my application rejected? Because I was a woman. And they did not want to lower their standards by allowing a woman physician, into the Medical Society of Milwaukee. Well, things started to change in the 1860s. I happened to meet Erastus Bradley Wilcott, who was Brigadier General and a surgeon and a physician. We fell in love. We got married in 1869, even though he was 22 years my senior. He was a widower. His wife had passed away 9 years ago. He had fathered 5 children with his first wife, but after 9 years, he was ready to get married again. So we married in 1869. That year, I applied to the Medical Society of Milwaukee. And guess what?
You were accepted.
Exactly right. I was accepted that year into the Medical Society of Milwaukee as Dr. Laura Ross Wilcott. 1869 was a big year for me. It was the year I got married. It was the year I was accepted into the Medical Society. And I was also a suffragist. So that year, I paid for and helped to organize the very first suffrage convention in the city of Milwaukee. It was held in February of 1869 in downtown Milwaukee. And we had, oh my goodness, we had some big heavy hitters. We have logs that people drive around them on the grass. So in 1869, we had some big heavy hitters that came to the very first suffrage convention in Milwaukee. We had Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Mary Livermore, all came to Milwaukee during our convention and talked with Milwaukee women about the importance of voting and their rights and suffrage, the right to vote. But since most of the women at that time were German speaking here in Milwaukee, our own Matilda Anneke, a big suffragist who was buried in Section 8, was at the podium translating everything that they said into German so that all of the women could hear and understand the importance of suffrage in the United States. So when I died in 1915, I never found out if women got the right to vote. When I died in 1915, I never had the right to vote, since in Wisconsin, the right to vote was not granted to women until 1919. But before I passed away, I left a will, and I left money and provisions and details for my husband's grandsons to construct, to have erected a monument in my husband's honor. Maybe you recognize this. It's a picture of a horse, of a soldier. It's a picture of a soldier on a horse. And this statue is erected in Lake Park. It's near the Lions, near the lighthouse, but it's erected in Lake Park. So this is not just any soldier. This is not just any horse. This is my husband, Erastus Bradley Wilcott, Surgeon General, physician, Surgeon General of the United States, of the state of Wisconsin. And he's also seated on his horse, Gunpowder. So I wanted to make sure that my husband's memory continued on through the erection of the statue in Lake Park. But how is my memory carried on? Well, there is no statue in my honor. There is no memorial plaque, no historical marker in my honor. The only way that my memory lives on is when you attend functions like this. And I get to tell my story, and you tell my story to others, and when you go visit Lake Park and you say, oh yes, that's Erastus Bradley Wilcott, and he was the husband of Laura Ross Wilcott, and they're all buried at Forest Home Cemetery. So thank you so much for visiting with us today, and thank you for listening to my story.